You ever had one of those mornings where the alarm goes off and you just can't? Not because you're tired, but because life feels heavy, or maybe you're overwhelmed, stuck in your head, or honestly, you just don't feel like it. You lie there, thinking about everything you should be doing, and yet, you don't move. That moment right there, that's where Mel Robbins' story begins. And that's exactly why she wrote the 5-second rule. Mel wasn't always a motivational speaker or a best-selling author. In fact, when this book started taking shape, she was at one of the lowest points in her life. Her marriage was hanging by a thread. Her career was off the rails. She was jobless, broke, drinking too much, and waking up every morning with dread in her chest. She didn't feel like doing anything, but she had to, because life wasn't going to wait for her to get it together. Sound familiar? Then, one night, while watching a commercial with a rocket launch, of all things, she had a weird idea. What if, instead of laying in bed thinking and overthinking and waiting to feel ready, she just launched herself out of bed like a rocket? She told herself, "I'm gonna count backward 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and when I hit 1 I'm getting up. No matter what." And guess what? It worked. One small action. One weird little countdown. And it flipped the switch in her brain. That tiny idea turned into something massive, not just for her, but for millions of people. The 5-second rule was published in 2017, and since then, it's become a movement. It's not just a book, it's a tool, a mindset, a way to get your power back. So what is the rule, really? It's as simple as it sounds, and that's what makes it so genius. If you have an instinct to act, on a goal, a task, a tough conversation, a healthy habit, you have 5 seconds to physically move before your brain talks you out of it. You count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. That's it. No drama. No overthinking. Just movement. And in that moment, you beat your own mind at its game. Mel explains it in such a relatable way. This isn't about becoming some superhuman. It's about doing the tiny hard thing that leads to the big life you want. Because here's the truth, your mind is wired to protect you from discomfort, risk, and change. So when you hesitate, even for a few seconds, your brain hits the brakes. It starts feeding you excuses. I'm too tired. What if I fail? Now's not the right time. And before you know it, that spark of motivation is gone. The 5-second rule hijacks that hesitation. It short-circuits the self-doubt. And it gives you just enough time to act before fear sets in. It's not about motivation, it's about action. And action creates momentum. This matters now more than ever. We live in a world of constant distraction, low attention spans, and a culture that tells us to wait until we feel ready or motivated. But let's be honest. If we waited until we felt ready, half of us wouldn't get out of bed, let alone chase a dream or set a boundary or hit the gym. Life doesn't reward the thinker, it rewards the doer. And Mel's rule helps you become that doer, 5 seconds at a time. And it's not just about productivity or waking up early. It's about confidence. It's about breaking the patterns that keep you small. It's about finally speaking up, setting that boundary, walking into that interview with your head high, saying no when you need to, or yes to something new. The rule helps you trust yourself again. That voice inside that says, do it? It's not wrong. You've just been ignoring it for too long. Mel shares story after story, real people from all walks of life, who used this rule to change their habits, quit toxic jobs, fix their relationships, start businesses, heal from anxiety, and just show up more fully in their own lives. And the best part? It doesn't take years of therapy or expensive coaching. It takes 5 seconds of courage. So whether you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or like your potential is hiding under layers of fear and hesitation, this book is your wake-up call. Mel doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but she gives you something better, a way to start moving toward them. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to know how it all ends. You just need 5 seconds. 5 seconds to choose action over doubt. To push through fear. To take your life back, one tiny brave moment at a time. And that's what the 5-second rule is all about. A simple tool, a powerful mindset, and a reminder that you're always just one decision away from a different life. Let's start with part 1, the 5-second rule. The book begins with chapter 1, 5 seconds to change your life, and it hits the ground running, not with fluff, but with vulnerability. Mel Robbins doesn't walk in wearing a cape. She walks in with a story that sounds a lot like something you, or someone you love, might have lived through. She sets the scene. Years earlier, her life was spiraling. Not in an explosive, dramatic way, but in the slow, quiet kind of fall that so many people know too well. She had just lost her job. Her husband's business was failing. They were behind on bills. Creditors were calling. Her marriage was strained. She wasn't sleeping. And when the alarm would go off in the morning, she'd hit snooze, not once, but over and over again, because the idea of facing the day felt unbearable. The sound of the alarm felt like a personal attack. This wasn't just procrastination. It was paralysis. The kind where you know what you need to do, but you just don't do it. That deep kind of shameful stuckness that makes you feel like a failure even before the day has begun. And she talks about it so plainly, so honestly, that you feel it in your chest. Then, one night, something ridiculous happened that changed everything. Mel was watching TV, probably with a drink in her hand, dreading the next morning, and she saw a rocket launch. Just the standard, dramatic NASA countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. But instead of fading away into background noise, that moment lodged itself in her mind. She thought, what if I launched myself out of bed tomorrow like a rocket? She brushed it off. It was a silly thought. But the next morning, the alarm went off, and something in her snapped. She counted down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And she stood up. No snooze. No delay. No battle in her brain. Just movement. It was the first one she'd had in a long time. That brings us to chapter 2, how I discovered the rule. Mel didn't immediately call it the 5-second rule. In fact, she didn't call it anything. It was just this weird little trick she used to get herself to move. She didn't tell anyone about it, not her husband, not her friends. But she kept doing it. Every day. Over and over again. She used it to stop procrastinating little things. Getting out of bed, brushing her teeth, making phone calls, tackling bills. But soon, she started using it for bigger things too, confronting problems, stopping negative thoughts, choosing to be present with her kids instead of checking out. She realized the rule wasn't about being productive. It was about taking control of her mind, her impulses, her fear, her life. And here's the beautiful, real-life magic of it, she still didn't feel motivated. That never showed up. What showed up was the ability to take action without needing to feel ready. The countdown gave her just enough space to interrupt her default thinking. Just enough pause to step over her fear and into motion. This wasn't about feeling like it. It was about beating the feeling that was holding her back. As she started rebuilding her life, Mel casually mentioned this trick in a few interviews and speeches. She wasn't promoting it, just sharing it as part of her personal journey. And that's where chapter 3, what you can expect when you use it, begins. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the world started emailing her, tweeting her, sending messages on Facebook. They were trying the rule, and it was working. A college student used it to overcome crippling anxiety and show up for class. A man used it to finally leave a job he hated. A mom used it to stop yelling and start connecting with her kids. A woman used it to stop smoking after 20 years. Another man used it to rebuild his health after a heart attack. These weren't small wins. They were life-shifting decisions made possible by 5 seconds of courage. And that was the pattern Mel started to see. This rule worked in the spaces where doubt, fear, anxiety, overthinking, and habits lived. The rule wasn't motivational fluff, it was a tool. It didn't make things easier. It made action possible. It gave people something they were starving for: control, agency. That moment of doing instead of freezing. Mel makes something very clear here. Change doesn't come from knowing what to do. Most of us already know. We've read the books, we've made the lists, we've watched the YouTube videos. The missing piece isn't knowledge, it's action. The 5-second rule is the missing link between knowledge and doing. And now we hit chapter 4, why the rule works. This chapter goes under the hood, into the brain. But it's not heavy or clinical, it's relatable, like Mel is sitting next to you on a couch, explaining how your own mind works in plain English. She explains that when you have an instinct to act on something, a goal, a change, a new habit, you have a very small window before your brain starts working against you. Literally. That moment of instinct is powered by your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and action. But if you hesitate, even for a few seconds, your brain shifts into protection mode. The limbic system takes over. And it starts feeding you excuses, fears, and rationalizations. That's why you talk yourself out of working out. Or why you don't speak up in meetings. Or why you keep waiting to make that call. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to keep you safe. But it doesn't know the difference between actual danger and just discomfort. And that's where you get stuck. The 5-second rule hijacks that process. When you count backward, 5-4-3-2-1, you interrupt the pattern. You activate the prefrontal cortex. You push yourself into motion before your brain can shut it down. It's like flipping a mental switch from default to intentional. And here's the thing, once you act, even in a tiny way, your brain starts to shift. You start to believe in yourself again. Confidence grows. Momentum builds. And slowly but surely, you start trusting your ability to handle hard things. Mel doesn't promise that the rule will fix your whole life overnight. But she's crystal clear about this. Your life comes down to your decisions. And most of those decisions are made in micro moments, split seconds where you choose to move forward, or you don't. The 5-second rule gives you a way to own those moments. And the more you use it, the more power you take back. That's the essence of part 1. You're not waiting for motivation. You're not hoping for inspiration. You're not trying to be fearless. You're building a new way to act in the presence of fear. You're learning how to beat hesitation with action. And it all starts with 5 seconds. Next is part 2, the power of courage. This part of the book is where Mel stops just explaining the 5-second rule and starts showing you what it actually does to your life once you start using it. And that impact? It's centered on one big word, courage. But not the kind of courage we usually think about. This isn't about grand gestures or huge, dramatic decisions. Mel's talking about everyday courage. The quiet kind. The deeply personal kind. The courage that lives in the cracks of your day, the moments that most people overlook. Chapter 5 is called Everyday Courage, and this one really peels back the curtain on the small battles we all fight with ourselves. It starts with a powerful truth. Every single day, you have dozens, maybe even hundreds, of little impulses. You have ideas, instincts, nudges to do something different. To try something, say something, stop something. They bubble up inside you like whispers from your future self. But most of us? We ignore them. Why? Because we hesitate. We feel fear. Not always a big, dramatic fear. Sometimes it's just that quiet, annoying feeling of what if. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I sound stupid? What if I'm not good enough? Mel explains that the moment those fears pop up, you're in a very vulnerable spot. Your brain starts working overtime to protect you from discomfort. And what does it do? It shuts you down. It convinces you to play small. To wait. To stay safe. It doesn't even feel like fear anymore. It just feels like being realistic. Or tired. Or busy. But under the surface, fear is running the show. Now, here's where the 5-second rule becomes your weapon. That instinct, to speak up, to apply for something, to say no, to say yes, to try, is like a spark. And the moment you count down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move, you protect that spark. You act before fear can smother it. And in doing that, you build courage. One moment at a time. Mel shares stories from real people here. People who use the rule not to do flashy things, but to reclaim their power in everyday life. Like the woman who used it to finally speak up in a toxic relationship. Or the guy who had an idea for a business but had been sitting on it for years, and finally made the first phone call. Or the college student who used the rule to face her social anxiety and start conversations instead of retreating. Each story has the same heartbeat: action, not perfection. Courage, not comfort. These are the kinds of choices that reshape your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hides or hesitates, and start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. Then we move into Chapter 6, What Are You Waiting For? This chapter digs into the excuses we live behind. And listen, this part hits hard. Mel calls it like it is. Most of us are waiting for something to change before we change. We think once we have more time, more money, more energy, more clarity, then we'll go for it. Then we'll act. But Mel says, you're lying to yourself. She tells you plainly, you'll never feel ready. That perfect moment you're waiting for? It's not coming. You won't suddenly wake up fearless. You won't magically feel confident before doing the hard thing. That's not how the brain works. Confidence is not the prerequisite for action, it's the result. And here's the twist: the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Hesitation becomes a habit. You rehearse it every time you say, I'll do it tomorrow. Every time you don't raise your hand. Every time you hold back when your gut said, go. You train your brain to associate discomfort with danger, and you shrink. Not physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. You begin to doubt your voice. Doubt your worth. Doubt your ideas. But the 5-second rule? It breaks that cycle. It forces you to practice courage. Not fake it, practice it. Like a muscle. You build it by using it. You learn to move even while your heart races. You take the shot, send the email, say the truth, even when your palms are sweating. Mel says courage is a skill. One that we all have, but most of us let it rust from underuse. With the 5-second rule, you shine it up again. 1 second of bravery. One small act of movement. One moment where you don't let fear call the shots. Chapter 7 is titled You'll Never Feel Like It, and honestly, it might be the most liberating chapter in the whole book. Because Mel frees you from this massive myth that's been holding you hostage for years: motivation. She says it flat out: motivation is garbage. And she means it. Motivation is a mood, not a strategy. It's like waiting for the wind to blow the right way before you start sailing. You can't build a life on a feeling that comes and goes like the weather. Mel explains that your brain is designed to protect you from discomfort. So of course you don't feel like getting up early, or going to the gym, or having that difficult conversation. Your brain doesn't care about your goals. It cares about keeping you safe and comfortable. That's why the hardest part of any change isn't the doing, it's the starting. And that's what the 5-second rule unlocks: the start. The act of showing up. Of pushing past the I don't feel like it voice. Of proving, in that tiny moment, that you are in charge. Not your emotions, not your excuses, not your fears. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop blaming yourself for not feeling motivated. You stop waiting for the perfect mood or the perfect moment. You stop letting feelings decide your future. And you start building a mindset based on action. On discipline. On trust in yourself. By the end of part 2, you realize something powerful. You already have courage inside you. It's been there all along. The only thing missing was a trigger, something to get you out of your head and into your life. And now you have it. The rule isn't just a countdown. It's a revolution in your habits. A way to stop waiting and start living. This is where the transformation really begins. Because once you realize courage isn't some rare trait, it's a choice you can make in 5 seconds, nothing stays the same. Let's dive into part 3. The power of confidence. This part of the book shifts the energy. You've already seen how the 5-second rule can wake you up from autopilot and push you to be courageous in small, everyday moments. But in part 3, Mel takes us into what all those tiny, brave decisions add up to, and that's confidence. Not the fake kind. Not the, look at me, kind. But real, grounded, unshakable belief in yourself. It opens with Chapter 8, Building Real Confidence. Mel makes it clear right away, confidence isn't something you're born with. It's not something only certain personalities have. You don't need to be outgoing, charismatic, or loud to be confident. Confidence isn't a trait. It's a skill. And just like courage, it's something you build by how you act. She tells us confidence doesn't come from achievement. It doesn't come from compliments or success or likes on your Instagram posts. It comes from something way deeper, the relationship you have with yourself. When you keep promises to yourself, when you do the hard thing, when you speak up, when you try even when it's scary, you build trust with yourself. And that trust? That's the foundation of confidence. Mel says this so clearly it sticks with you. Confidence is the decision to try. Not the decision to succeed. Just to try. Confidence is what shows up when you take the leap, even while you're shaking. It's the inner voice that grows louder the more you show up for yourself. And with every single 5-second decision, you're stacking evidence that you can trust yourself to act, even when it's hard. Then in Chapter 9, Self-Doubt, Mel takes us into the emotional core of why so many of us struggle with confidence in the first place. She unpacks the real root of self-doubt, not as weakness or laziness, but as something we learned. It's something that got built into us over time through criticism, failure, rejection, and comparison. She brings in powerful personal stories here, including moments from her own life where self-doubt nearly paralyzed her. The way she talks about standing in front of opportunities and immediately hearing that voice in her head whisper, "Who do you think you are?" It's raw. It's real. Because we've all been there. Mel doesn't shame you for feeling doubt, she normalizes it. But she also gives you a way out. She explains how using the 5-second rule short-circuits the loop of overthinking and second-guessing. Because let's face it, most of our self-doubt doesn't come from reality. It comes from thinking too much. We get an idea, or we feel a desire to do something bold, and then our brain floods us with reasons not to. But the rule? It cuts in before that flood takes over. When you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go, you skip the spiral. You move before doubt can dig in its claws. And over time, this rewires your relationship with fear and self-worth. You stop asking if you're good enough and start realizing that doing makes you enough. In Chapter 10, Inside the Mind of a Procrastinator, Mel delivers a gut-punch truth. Procrastination isn't a time problem, it's an emotional one. She explains that most people procrastinate not because they're lazy, but because they're overwhelmed, afraid of failure, or chasing perfection. You don't delay that phone call because it's hard, you delay it because of how it feels. You don't avoid the gym because you hate working out, you avoid it because deep down, you're carrying shame about your body or self-worth. It's emotional weight. And again, the 5-second rule steps in, not to force you to feel different, but to get you moving anyway. It helps you separate your feelings from your actions. Because let's be real, you don't need to feel like it to do it. You just need to start. Mel gives real-world examples of people using the rule to stop procrastinating in life-changing ways. Whether it's starting a project they've avoided for years, finally writing that book, cleaning out that garage that's been causing low-key anxiety for months. And the big shift? Once you start, that emotional fog begins to lift. You start seeing progress. And with progress comes confidence. She wraps up this part by showing you something powerful. Confidence is a byproduct of action. Not the other way around. Every time you act before your brain talks you out of it, you grow. And it's not about having all the answers or getting it perfect. It's about showing up for yourself. Every single time you do that, you're reinforcing the truth that you are someone who can be trusted to try, to show up, to lead your life. By the end of part 3, you start realizing something profound. Confidence doesn't come from winning, it comes from starting. And starting? That only takes 5 seconds. Now, Part 4. the power of the rule. Right off the bat in this part, Mel makes something super clear. The 5-second rule might feel like a simple little trick, but under the hood, it's built on deep neuroscience and behavior theory. It's not fluff. It's not magic. It's biology. She opens with Chapter 11, The Reason Why the Rule Works, and gets right into how your brain is wired to protect you from change. That might sound a little strange at first, because we all say we want change. We want better habits, healthier bodies, more confidence, stronger relationships. But when it's time to actually do the thing that brings change, that's where resistance kicks in. Why? Because your brain's primary job is survival. And anything that feels unfamiliar, even if it's good for you, gets flagged as a potential threat. So what happens? Your brain uses hesitation as a defense mechanism. It stalls you. It floods you with overthinking. It creates just enough pause to keep you from moving forward. And that's where the 5-second rule slides in like a ninja. When you count down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move, you interrupt the hesitation habit. You step right over that moment where fear would normally shut you down. It's a tiny action, but it creates a huge shift in how your brain fires. You activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, focus, and intentional behavior. So instead of reacting on autopilot, you're engaging with intention. You're taking control of your next move. Mel explains this with passion, but also with clarity. She's not trying to make you a neuroscientist, she just wants you to understand your power. Because once you realize that hesitation isn't just a personality flaw, it's a pattern, you start to feel way less stuck. And the 5-second rule becomes your pattern breaker. Chapter 12, The Science Behind the Rule, dives a little deeper. This is where she really connects the rule with behavioral psychology. Mel pulls in research from top cognitive scientists and psychologists to back up what she's experienced firsthand. One key point she makes here is that habits are formed through what's called the habit loop, a cue, a routine, and a reward. Most of our behaviors, especially the ones we don't like, run on this loop. For example, the cue might be stress, the routine is reaching for your phone or food, and the reward is distraction or comfort. What the 5-second rule does is insert a break between cue and routine. You feel the cue, like anxiety or temptation, and instead of falling into the usual behavior, you count down and redirect. That tiny countdown gives you a wedge, a window, to insert a new, better action. And that's how real change begins. Mel also touches on how the rule helps build something called metacognition, basically, your ability to think about your thoughts. And that's a big deal. Because the more aware you are of your mental habits, the more power you have to shift them. She explains that by counting backward, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're engaging your frontal lobe. It's a pattern interrupt. It pulls you away from the primitive parts of the brain that operate on fear, doubt, and old habits, and into the part that makes conscious, growth-focused choices. Then comes Chapter 13, Changing Your Behavior for Good, and this chapter is like a rally cry for long-term transformation. Mel says flat out, change doesn't happen because you read a book, or set a goal, or watch a motivational video. It happens because of the small, repeated actions you take. And those actions? They're often the ones you resist the most. Waking up early. Saying no. Speaking up. Going to the gym. Hitting publish. Making the call. And those are the exact kinds of actions the 5-second rule is built to support. Because the hardest part is almost always starting. Once you start, momentum kicks in. And once you do it enough, it becomes a new habit loop. A new identity. You start seeing yourself differently, not as someone who wants to change, but as someone who does. One of the most powerful takeaways from this part of the book is that you are not your habits. You are not your procrastination, your self-doubt, your fear. Those are just patterns your brain has practiced over time. And if they were learned, they can be unlearned. With action. With intention. With 5 seconds of courage. Mel closes this section with a firm but loving reminder, this is your life. Not your thoughts. not your fears, not your excuses. And if you want to change your life, you have to stop thinking about it and start doing something about it. And that doing starts in 5 seconds. Next is part 5, the power of you. This section opens with a feeling, not just a lesson. You can hear Mel's tone shift, like a coach in the last huddle before the big game. She's shown you the science, the stories, the results. And now she wants you to stop doubting yourself and start living. No more overthinking. No more hiding. This part is about embracing that the life you want is waiting on the other side of just one small decision. We start with chapter 14, Make Yourself Proud. And honestly, this chapter feels like a love letter to everyone who's ever felt stuck, small, or invisible. Mel talks about how easy it is to lose yourself in the chaos of everyday life, between work, family, responsibilities, expectations, until one day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize who you've become. You feel like you're surviving, not living. But then she flips it. She tells you something that hits deep. You don't need to have a grand plan or perfect roadmap. You just need to make one decision that makes you proud. And then another. And then another. That's it. Mel's message here is powerful and simple. Your life changes the moment you decide to act like the person you want to become. Every time you use the 5-second rule, you're proving to yourself that you can trust you. That you're willing to show up, even when it's hard. Even when no one's clapping. And that trust builds something bigger than confidence. It builds self-respect. And when you respect yourself, everything else starts to shift. She shares more real-life stories in this section. People from all walks of life who use the rule to take back control. From someone who overcame addiction, to a mom who rebuilt her confidence after divorce, to a young guy who used it to finally break through social anxiety and speak in class for the first time. It's not about fame or money, it's about people reclaiming their sense of self. Then we get into chapter 15, Rise and Push, which is Mel's way of saying, you've got the tools now. You know the rule works. So what are you going to do with it? She talks about resistance, how even with the rule in your pocket, you're still going to have days where fear creeps in. Where you feel tired, discouraged, tempted to fall back into old patterns. And that's okay. Change isn't linear. Life is messy. But the rule? It's your anchor. It's the one thing you can reach for, every single day, to pull yourself forward when you feel stuck. Mel tells you that pushing yourself doesn't mean hustling 24/7 or burning out. It just means choosing growth over comfort, over and over again. It means refusing to let fear drive the car. It means asking, what's one thing I can do today that moves me forward? And then, counting down, and doing it. This chapter feels like Mel's final pep talk. She reminds you that you already have everything you need. You don't need permission. You don't need a guarantee. You just need you. And 5 seconds of courage. And then, she brings it full circle. In the final pages, Mel reflects on her own journey. How her life was falling apart when she stumbled on the rule. How she never thought a simple countdown would lead to a best-selling book, a global movement, a new identity. She never set out to be a motivational speaker. She just wanted to get out of bed. That was it. And that's the point. The smallest actions lead to the biggest transformations. Mel leaves you with this final idea. The 5-second rule isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing to act despite fear. Again and again. Because those small moments? They stack. They change how you see yourself. They shift your identity from someone who waits to someone who leads. And leadership? That's not about a title or job. It's about leading your own life, with purpose, with action, and with heart. And that's it. That's the 5-second rule, not just a book, but a mindset. A tool. A quiet revolution in how you live your life. So here's what it all comes down to. You're one decision away from a totally different life. One decision. And that decision can start with something as simple as counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and moving. Mel Robbins didn't create the rule to write a bestseller. She created it to save herself. To get out of bed. to break through the fog of anxiety, self-doubt, and overwhelm. And what she discovered was something universal. You don't need to wait until you feel ready to change your life. In fact, if you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. The 5-second rule teaches us that action beats hesitation, every time. Because hesitation is the killer of dreams. It's not loud or dramatic, it's silent. It creeps in with thoughts like, "What if I fail?" Or, "I'll do it tomorrow." But those moments add up. And over time, they cost you your confidence, your goals, your peace of mind. But now you've got the antidote. A tool that's always with you. 5 seconds. That's it. The rule is grounded in neuroscience, but it's driven by courage. You're literally interrupting your brain's old patterns and inserting new ones. You're reprogramming yourself, moment by moment, to become someone who moves, someone who starts, someone who leads. And confidence? It's not something you're born with. It's built. Action by action. Every time you use the rule to speak up, get moving, make that scary call, show up when it's uncomfortable, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. And over time, that vote becomes your identity. So here are your final reminders. Like messages scribbled on sticky notes across the mirror, you don't have to feel ready. You just have to move. You can't control how you feel, but you can control what you do. Motivation is fleeting. Action is power. Confidence is earned, not found. And fear? It doesn't go away. But it doesn't have to win. Use the rule in the little things. Getting out of bed, making that first move, stopping yourself from spiraling. And then use it for the big stuff. Launching that business, leaving the job that drains you, standing up for what matters. You'll build momentum. You'll build trust. And that will change everything. You are not stuck. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are just one decision away. So count it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. The rest? That's your story to write. If you found this summary insightful and valuable, don't forget to show your support by subscribing to the Mindful Brief on YouTube. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this audiobook summary, share it with your peers, friends, or family who might benefit from it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps us create more in-depth and valuable content for you. Stay tuned for more summaries, insights, and strategies to elevate your knowledge and career. Subscribe now and be part of the journey.